Hello teacher, my name is Daniela Posadas and this is my video of materials, methodology and language. So now, here we say that the major flow in language teaching is the content. So teachers always teach language. For example, in mathematics, it has been noticeable that many of the times when students fail, it is not because they do not know what to do with the mathematics and everything, but it's because they don't understand the problem. They don't understand what they have to do. So if they don't understand because of the language, they don't know if they have to, they have to sum, if they have to, which operation they have to do. Now, we use what is called means of expression, and they have to be taught. This is when we have to describe an item using words which distinguish it from any other item within the same generic class, and you have to put the description into a very few words. Now, but who is teaching all of this and who is teaching the high-level operations in the Bloom taxonomy? To appraise, to categorize, to compare, to judge, to differentiate. These all require different text types within the language frames when applied to different academic disciplines. It is not the same to appraise in art as it is in physics, as it is in English, as it is in, it's not the same. Now, language across the curriculum, LAC, in the 1980s, used a very simple slogan, which I really liked. All teachers are language teachers, because it doesn't matter if we're teaching mathematics, it doesn't matter if we're teaching biology, whatever we are teaching, we are making use of the language. So in countries with a LAC policy, teachers are provided with courses to help them plan materials which reflect a more language-based approach. And this is excellent. I think everybody should use this. Everybody should use the LAC policy. Now, when a teacher is teaching students that are learning in a second language, the teacher faces the situation and immediately we're required to make adjustments, obviously. These adjustments are in language, materials, and methodology. Now, in language, the teacher used to speak to the students as if they were native speakers, but modifies the speech pattern. So the classes become less teacher-centered, there is less teacher talk and more facilitation of tasks, and language is broken down into key terms. Key language is emphasized, revised, and recycled. Comprehension checks are more frequent, so it's not much about the language in this time. It's more about keywords. Now, the materials are modified as to break down text by highlighting the salient components, summarizing tasks that tend to be more inductive and less based on presentation comprehension. And if an activity is complex in terms of procedures and/or concepts, the language demand can be reduced. If the activity is complex linguistically, then the procedural demand can be reduced. And now the methodology. The methods can be more process-led. There is a high amount of visual support. Pair and group work is more common. Now, when CLIO is used properly in process-led tasks, basically the procedure, there will be characteristics during the process. For example, the language does not need to be pre-taught. The language occurs naturally in its conceptual context. The language occurs naturally in its functional context. The language can be easily be reproduced in an assessment context. The language does not need to be explicit. It is vehicular to the task. The language does not need to be studied afterwards or abstracted from the control framework because it is basically a full experience. So, for example, they talked about this exercise where the students read the description and characteristics of the planets, and they have to know which planet were they talking about. This was very interesting. So if you can see here, they are learning about the planets. They are not learning about the grammar of the language, but they are going to learn the language despite everything. So, and here the language was not pre-taught, and here everything was within the context, and you don't have to study again about the language because you remember the exercise, plus you were learning about the planets or whatever you were learning, and then also you are learning the language. So there are two types of objectives, the outcome objectives and the priority objectives. The outcome objectives, it might describe what can assess through some form of production carried out by students, like the differentiate between the planets, like the example that I mentioned, or priority objects. The teacher can choose how to reach that outcome in a variety of ways. This is a methodological choice. So in choosing to lecture the students for an hour and then testing them the next day on what they have remembered, the teacher emphasizes or prioritizes content over procedure. Or in choosing the running dictation, the teacher emphasizes and prioritizes the procedure over the content. So Clio integrates the holy trinity of content, language, and skills. It is the teacher's decisions when and why and how he or she might wish to emphasize these elements above the others. So the procedure is whatever goes in the classroom can actually be the objective. So language is learned as part of the process, not as the aim of the process. Like what I was saying, we can learn about clothes, we can learn about numbers, we can learn about everything, but we are not learning the language per se. We're learning about counting, and we're learning about which clothes am I wearing. Well, I'm wearing today because it's hot. I'm wearing a t-shirt. I'm wearing shorts. And here I'm learning weather. I'm learning clothes. I'm learning vocabulary, but not exactly using grammar and language per se. It's about the context and it's everything. So the language that the teaching can benefit from replacing talking about language with using language to talk about real subject matter. And the subject teaching can benefit from understanding how language is central to learners' assimilation of both conceptual and procedural knowledge. Now, these ideas were expressed by the slogan adopted by the European CLIO Consortium, using languages to learn and learning to use languages. So in here you can see that the task-based procedure is saying hello to the thematic concept, but none of them is paying attention to the language, and that's why the language is thinking, oh, those guys don't seem to talk about me these days. I feel so used. And yes, that's what we do. That's the main goal of everything. So the interdepartmental planning departmental planning, the advantages are that there are real cooperation between departments. We are using English, but we're also learning Spanish, we're also learning biology, we're also using math. So we have to use cooperation between all departments. We have mutual support across two languages, conceptual and procedural. We have the language transfer, awareness of key terms into languages, language awareness for the subject teacher, and content awareness for the language teacher. So once language teachers, us, are also trained in how to analyze, to exploit, to break down, and to finally use real thematic content effectively, language teaching will cease to be the curriculum almanac. So we really need to teach, we really need to know how to teach and how to learn this way. So now we have the CO and the CC, the content obligatory and the content compatible. So the content obligatory language objectives specify the language required for students to develop, master, and communicate about given content material. The CO language objectives are both structural, which is consistent of nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and rhetorical devices, and functional, which consists of note-taking, requesting and giving information, narrating, persuading, expressing opinion, etc. The content-compatible language, objectives can be taught within the context of a given content area, but they are not required for successful content mastery. The objectives derive from the second foreign language curriculum and the ongoing assessment of learners' needs and progress. The following list containing language for expressing thinking processes which learners are required to carry out in lessons. Kid Kelly in 2007 identifies 14 possible substitution frames and arrange the questions that the teachers can do. So first we have defining, and the teacher might ask, what is whatever, give me the definition of how would you define, who can define, give me the definition of, and what do we call this, for example. Number 2, we have classifying. So how would you classify it? How many kinds of are there and who can classify? Number 3, we have illustrating, exemplifying. Number 4, we have contrasting. So in what way and how is this different from, how can one or you distinguish this from, and what is the difference between this and, Number 5, we have, sorry, I forgot. Number 5 is contextualizing. Number 6, giving reasons. Number 7, predicting. Number 8, summarizing. Number 9, hypothesizing. Number 10, time sequence and process. Number 11, listing. Number 12, adding. Number 13, opposition. What's another way of saying? Give me another way of saying that. How else can we say this and or express this? And number 14, drawing conclusions or deducting. So the difficulty in text, the primacy of task, basically, the writing philosophy of Cleo will appear to be that there is no such thing as a difficult text. As you can see, it should be clear that it's not quite that the text itself is the problem, but rather the complexity of the task. You can introduce a student to any concept. It all depends to what are you going to ask the student to do. So this depends on our deductive objective. So I'm not going to teach about the solar system to the students, to my kindergarten students, and ask them for the volume of the planets or for the distance between them and the sun. No, I'm going to ask them what color are the planets. I'm going to ask them which is bigger than the other. I'm going to ask them, is the planet hot or is the planet cold? Those are the questions and those are the tasks that my kids can actually do. Now, thank you very much. I hope you liked my presentation. I've been really enjoying the class. Thank you very much for everything. I'll see you the next week. Thank you, teacher.